We have got to push on our legislators to spend the money on mental health, not on more police in schools. And I don't even mind if there are some SROs who they've already got relationships, just take the guns out. And I know there's increase. Let me tell you, there is a significant increase in students acting out in schools right now. They are. So you have some that are turning that energy inside against themselves, and others who are acting out. And if you happen to work at Iroquois High School right now, where it's 85% poverty, it's a bad job. But Atherton High School is not a good job either right now anymore. I am desperate to have your voices talking to people who will respect you way more than they will ever respect me. And just say, we're not advocating violence in schools. We don't want that. My kids are at JC. I don't want that. We just want help for these young people who are dealing with all kinds of challenges. We've got to do more prevention work. And I think if we did that, we'd have better educational outcomes. We'd have safer schools and safer communities.
Some of the things that are on the table in Frankfurt Pass, I won't say it will totally destroy the work of racial equity coursework and things like that, but it will eliminate some of the things, some of the bridges that we have built for students. The whole concept of telling school districts what they can and cannot teach, and the whole concept of saying, you can teach from this book and you cannot teach from that book. History is history, period. So I don't understand why we don't want our students to know their history, as we want to develop a sense of belonging to them. And the other thing I will say that I have heard numerous times is, we don't teach hate in JCPS, because there's a group of people saying, stop teaching students to hate. There's not a class in hate in any classroom at all. The other comment I would like to make is, there is no critical race theory in Jefferson County Public Schools. I'll say that again. There is no critical race theory in Jefferson County Public Schools. Critical race theory appears at the college level, normally in the law school. But the whole critical race theory is being held up as like, we don't have it in the first place, but we're obviously not speaking it in enough languages that people believe that. I have been on panels with people, gentleman from the University of Louisville Law School, who is very knowledgeable about the critical race theory. We don't have that. There seems to be a concern about teaching history. In teaching history, you don't teach hate, you teach facts. All that I talked about going through, putting the two districts together and what happened along the way, I don't think I have used the word hate about that process at all. It was emotional for some parents. But I'm not sure that hate was the focus. It was, parents did not want it to happen and they would do anything they could. But it is very concerning that nationwide, not just in Frankfort, Kentucky, there is a movement to take over what is taught in the schools. And some districts have already voted some things in other parts of the United States, but to take over the curriculum in the school district, to me, it is not moving in the right direction for equity and education for all students.
I was one of those kids who loved busing. I lived in Beecher Terrace and I was bused to St. Matthew's Elementary School. First I started out at Coleridge Taylor, then was bused to St. Matthew's. And I tell people all the time what a blessing it is to represent both of the areas where I went to elementary school, right? I never thought something like that would happen. And then I was bused to Carruthers Middle School. Amazing, wonderful experience. I was on the drill team when we won the regional championship. So, got to have that kind of experience. And then I went to Manual High School. And it wasn't necessarily because of busing, but because Manual's a magnet high school. So most of the time I actually caught TARP there. And for me, busing was an opportunity to get out of my neighborhood, which so many people that I grew up around never actually had a chance to get out of where they were, because as y'all know, car ownership is very low in the West End of Louisville. Mobility is low in the West End of Louisville. The resources needed to travel are low. And so many people stay where they are, not because they necessarily want to, but because they have to. They don't have a lot of choice and options. So busing gave me those options. Busing gave me the opportunity to experience different people in different neighborhoods. And to this day, I feel just so comfortable being wherever I am in Louisville. And I have a lot of family members and friends who can't say the same thing. They don't necessarily feel comfortable going into predominantly white spaces, for example, because they are afraid of police being used as a weapon against their Black bodies. I feel comfortable because that's what I grew up in, elementary, middle, high school. So it's like nothing to me. It's just the way things are. And so that's why I tend to remain an advocate of our busing system. I know it's not perfect, and I would never say that it is. I also don't know that we should abolish it fully, because I think, again, we would go back to, I think it would create more division in our community, because we will be taking away this kind of natural opportunity to get to know each other over real geographic divides.
The other thing that was the professors at the University of Kentucky did a study in terms of what is the cost of healthcare in Kentucky, unemployment, went through a number of different sort of, I would say, negative factors, and then did an analysis that if you increase the graduation or educational attainment level in the Commonwealth of Kentucky by 1 or 2 grade levels, that in fact you could cut the unemployment rate in half. You could in fact reduce the amount of money you spend on medical, Medicare, all of those things.
Incarceration.
If you just spend, and and I think back on the sessions and when people saw that, oh yeah, we need to do something different. We need to do something different. But then when they all got together on the floor or in their committee and talked about spending, oh, we can't do that. We just a poor state. We will always be a poor state until we're willing to make a commitment to make it better.
For me, my life really has been guided by 3 questions, 3 basic questions when I stop and think about it. Everything that I write, read, work on, the work that I do. The first is trying to understand how the dynamic of racial oppression developed in this country in the first place. From slavery to the activities of the American Colonization Society, how abolitionists are pushing back, all of this. How did the idea of racial oppression and categorization develop in America in the first place? That was the first thing. And I don't think you can understand very much until you understand that. My second key question, after understanding how race and racism were developed in the country, is trying to figure out how those divisions were augmented, how they were reified, how along the flow of American development, how forces put those things in place, but then made them stronger, how they were maintained. I think that's very, very important because racism shows up in different ways in America. We no longer have slavery, but we have the legacy of slavery, right? We no longer have Plessy versus Ferguson, but we have the legacy of Jim Crow. So how are these things continuously reinforced? So if you talk about voter suppression in the 21st century, if you look back to Reconstruction, you see the remnants of things that have been going on in the country for over 150 years. So it's important to understand that. And then third, I think it's where you all come in, is a very simple question. What can we do about it? Right? What can we do about it? How can we push back against it? And I certainly will argue that the first thing we have to do is to understand it, right? And then figure out what we can do in individual spaces.
The biggest thing you can do is pick an issue and advocate for that issue. If your issue is student assignment, because you follow that issue and advocate for that issue. If your issue is, building facilities, we need people who speak to these kind of issues, because JCPS is really an insufferable place to be, because you're fighting against really 50 years of negative press, and so whatever speaks to your heart the most, embrace that as an issue and partner with us to really advocate for it, because sometimes the superintendent just needs to hear, good job, you're in the right direction. Yeah. And when they're going in the wrong direction, they need to just be encouraged to move in a better direction.